What's up, everybody? It's me, E-Man. Listen, as you know, another season of From is on the way, but I know some time has gone by. You know, maybe you forgot a couple things and maybe you need a refresher, so have no fear, I've got you covered. Now, this video will be a more straightforward recap, but if you're interested, I also have another video that includes a lot more context and commentary, and it's basically going to be my breakdowns all in one place for you in a single video. So if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty about From, then be sure to check that one out. Anyway, here's a complete recap of this season. We start off with Sheriff Boyd ringing the bell throughout town. Restaurants are closing and everyone in town is walking home. Before locking up, we see the townsfolk adjusting some sort of talisman hanging on their wall. As the sheriff ensures everyone is home safe, there's a sign posted saying that there's been 96 days without incident. Frank is passed out on the floor at the local bar. The bartender closes up shop, locks up, and fixes the talisman by the door. Frank's wife and daughter look out for him, but there's no sign of Frank's return. His daughter, Megan, prays before bed until she hears a knocking at the window. A strange old woman is outside of the bedroom window, and it sounds like her grandma, but it sure doesn't look like grandma.
She's not your grandma.
I'm so lonely.
Despite her mother pleading with Megan not to open the window, Megan decided to open the window anyway and realizes really quickly that wasn't her damn grandma. Frank wakes up from his drunken stupor to find his family murdered. Boyd shows Frank the mutilated bodies of his wife and daughter. He tells the deputy to lock Frank up. Julie is telling her little brother Ethan a story in the RV. His mother assures him that monsters aren't real. Suddenly, the family comes across a fallen tree in the middle of the road. As they try to get back to the highway, they notice that they don't have any cell reception and they're also lost. They drive into a small town and notice some of the cars have flat tires. Earlier, the sheriff meets up with Donna and she reminds him of their agreement. He said that he just wanted to see his son Ellis. He gets around to meeting Ellis and the tensions are thick. The sheriff informed him that the death that happened earlier is going to be followed up with the service and he'd love for Ellis to come and pay his respects. Now during the service, the townspeople notice the RV and they're kind of surprised at the new arrivals. The sheriff tells everyone to remember what it was like when they all first arrived and everybody ignored Jim. The sheriff gives him some directions to the highway to help him get back on his way. However, the more they drove, the more they noticed that they kept on ending back right in the town. Another car heads towards them and the RV swerves off the road. Everyone in the RV appears to be injured and Ethan especially has a large object going through his leg. The other driver in the other car gets out and informs Sheriff Boyd about the accident. In the back seat of the car, another person crawls out. The sheriff handcuffs him to the car, and the townspeople come to the site of the accident to help everyone out. Sheriff Boyd wants Christy to help Ethan out by sewing his leg up. With only 40 minutes of daylight left, he pulls out the talisman. Sarah is taking care of Toby. He wakes up to see her and wonders what happened. She kisses him and tells him it's not his fault, then shanks him in the neck. It's getting dark. The sheriff has the talisman and starts to prep the RV to keep it safe. The townspeople start to drive back, but they mistakenly go over the tire spikes that they laid out earlier on the road. As night falls and Jim and Christy try to attend to Ethan's injury, the sheriff can see the weird, creepy powder people slowly surrounding the RV. Ethan's seizure has stopped. There's a knock at the RV door. Jim tries to open it, but the sheriff stops him immediately. The other town people are still running back to get inside until one of them trips and bumps their head. They arrive at the colony house and they see some of the monster people coming around the corner. The people in the house don't want to let the others inside. The creepers, they start to talk to Julie and the deputy immediately shoots them. Donna allows the people to come inside and tells them to get on their knees according to protocol. Julie and her mom are now getting tied up. Donna brings Tabitha in a room to tell her about the craziness of this town. Meanwhile, in the kitchen downstairs, Julie is still tied up. Victor comes down to get some peaches, and his weird self makes Julie very uncomfortable. Luckily, Fatima comes in and shoos Victor away. She brings Julie upstairs to show her some of Ellis's artwork. She says that the things out there will try to trick people and get inside your head. Sheriff Boyd explains that they don't know what those creepers are outside and that the talisman apparently protects anyone that's inside a house or an enclosed space. Those creepers are still trying to get inside and start climbing on top of the RV. Christy and Jim manage to pull out the object in Ethan's leg. We learn later that Christy was a third-year medical student and Jim was an engineer who built theme parks. Ethan wakes up and says that he saw all types of drawings on the wall, including the Lake of Tears. Back in town, Sarah is talking to herself, saying she can't do anymore. After deliberating with whatever voices are in her head, she finally decides to cut up Toby's body, starting with his tongue. Donna told Tabitha everything. She said that her and her sister were on a hunting trip until they saw the tree in the road and all the crows flying about. Her sister was killed in the streets by the monsters. Donna ran and hid during that time. That's just how people survived back then. She said the creepers would hunt people down just for fun. And she's been there for 3 years, 6 months, and 17 days. Kenny is struggling with his dad's declining health. Meanwhile, the nurse who is taking care of his father helps him go to bed. She goes to check on Toby, but then she sees that his body is completely mutilated and turns around, and the door is wide open, with the creeper standing right there. Christy sees Jim touching the talisman, and the creeper busts right through the window to kill everyone. Thankfully, it was all a dream. It's now morning and they can safely exit the RV. Father Khatri drives Julie and Tabitha back to the RV to reunite with the family. Sarah is sitting with her brother and tells him the story of the girl in a room with broken glass shards. She says that she hears their voices and that they told her to make Toby's death seem like the monsters did it and to leave the door open for them. Kenny arrives at the medical area to find the talisman fallen and his father's body completely mutilated. After finding out about the death of his dad, Kenny is heartbroken and angry. He goes out to cut some more wood to make some new chess pieces in memory of his now dead father. Ethan stares out the window and Julie tells him another story. She asks what he's looking at and he says nothing. Then we see that Ethan is a whole liar because he apparently is looking at a boy dressed in white smiling right back at him. Back at the colony house, Tabitha wakes up from a nightmare about the night before. Jade wakes up chained to the bed yelling for help. Donna nicely tells him to chill out and explains the situation. He doesn't believe them and thinks everyone is just a hired professional playing a prank on him. He steals someone's bike and rides away. We check in on various people in town and Boyd checks in on Frank. Ethan still sees the weird little boy in white. Kenny's mom is worried about running the local diner. Cuckoo Sarah walks in and acts like she had nothing to do with the death of Mrs. Lou's husband. Julie and Fatima continue to hang out, and Victor is outside taking steps to measure something. Father Khatri explains the choosing ceremony and what that entails. He explains the other rules, including the box. The only punishment for people is the box. There is no talisman inside, and we learn that it would be the first time that it would be used if someone's action led to other people getting killed. Jim and Tabitha are brought to the same house where the last incident happened. Jim is convinced about the danger and realizes that the town's rules actually do matter. Victor is still checking for measurements with the tree's movements. Ethan wants to know if he can help in any way. Victor tries to get him to leave, but Ethan mentions the little boy in white. He told Ethan that he's friends with the boy in white too. Julie scolds Ethan for talking to Victor and tells him not to talk to him at all. Jade goes into the diner, still obviously thinking that this is all an ultimate escape room. He then travels outside of town and finds a cellar of some sort. He opens one of the doors to find a dead body who turns and yells at him. When he looks again, there's nothing there. Boyd and Frank go for a walk, and Frank asks him if he could be buried near his family. Later, Boyd goes to the church to talk to Father Khatri. He said that he wanted the box to be just a deterrent and that he can't do it. He can't put Frank in the box. Father Khatri reminds him of the impact of not using the punishment in the event another similar incident happens. Sitting in the box himself, Boyd finally makes his decision. He goes back and gives Frank a talisman and tells him to just go off and live in the little shack in the woods that's been built out there. The Matthews family now gets to choose where they will live. Before that happens, Boyd tries to lecture the crowd about the rules in the town. However, before he can finish, Frank interrupts him. He gives a very heartfelt message about how regretful he is and how he wants to join his wife and daughter. Jade, on the other hand, still thinks this is all a joke and begins to mock the entire situation. Boyd has had enough and he forces Jade to make a decision where he wants to live, and Kenny escorts him out. He then asks the Matthews family where they want to stay. They all say the town except for Julie. Kenny takes Jade to see Toby's dead body. Jade starts to finally get the picture. The diner closes up and the radio turns on. The Matthews move into their home. Jade moves in with Kenny and his mom. Julie is celebrated and welcomed into the colony house. Boyd escorts Frank inside the box. Later that night, Frank can hear the creepers surrounding the box. Soon after, the creepers burst in, and that's the end of Frank. He dead. We start off with a flashback of young Victor climbing out of a cellar. As he walks out, there are several dead and mutilated bodies laying around. We jump forward into the current time with Julie waking up to find old Victor drawing her while she sleeps. Trudy then asks her for her pillow back, and Julie realizes that this girl is a whole klepto and took her clothes. Boyd has to clean up Frank's body and takes him over to the priest for burial. Jim and Ethan head over to the diner for breakfast. Jade shows Kenny the place where he saw the crushed body under the boulder and the symbol he saw on the ceiling. Kenny doesn't really believe him. Back at the diner, Ethan gets some pancakes for breakfast. While Jim goes to the bathroom to cry for a moment, Victor comes in to talk to Ethan. He told him that the trees have moved 4 inches. And he also confirms that the boy in white is the same boy that Ethan saw. Jim catches Victor with Ethan and threatens him to stay away from his son. Julie is having a hard time adjusting. Fatima talks her through her issues until Tabitha comes to talk to her daughter. Julie starts to get very frustrated and calls out her mom for keeping the secret about their divorce. Kenny and Jade talk about various locations from where people originally came from before they got into the town. The radio starts to flicker on and off. Tabitha and Jim start to argue outside. Victor comes to the back of the house and wants to talk to Ethan. He tells him that they have to go out and find the boy in white. So they go head off into the woods. Father Khatri tells Boyd that he needs to stop feeling sorry for himself. He says that Boyd has to be the strong one here because this chaos is going to take a toll on the town. Victor and Ethan go for a walk in the woods. Victor doesn't want to talk about how he got there or his past. They did see the boy in white walking throughout the woods. They come across a faraway tree, and Victor demonstrates how objects or people can enter in the tree, but where they end up is anyone's guess. Jim and Tabitha finally realize that Ethan is gone and go into the woods to find him. 2 stray dogs come near them, and Victor shoots a gun to scare them off. Jim tells Boyd about the pictures Victor drew for Ethan and that Victor carries a loaded gun. Boyd gives himself a fresh haircut and joins the Matthews for dinner. Meanwhile, Sarah starts to freak out as a bloody engraving is placed on her arm saying to kill the boy. She collapses and has a seizure. Back at the colony house, Ellis and Fatima give Julie her own bed in their room. Outside, Victor is seen digging up multiple graves to get a head start on the impending doom. Christy is taking care of Sarah, but Sarah doesn't want to see her brother Nathan, who just wants to come and check up on her. Boyd comes in to check on Sarah and avoids talking to Christy about his hand tremors. So instead, he then goes outside and keeps Nathan away from seeing Sarah. At the Matthews residence, Jim is creating a board on the wall for his family to start asking questions and try to figure things out together. Nathan sits at home looking at his sister's clothes, which are drenched in blood. Christy and Sarah start to catch up and have a little girl talk. Sarah asks Christy why her and Kenny don't hook up, but she said that she was engaged to someone else, in her past. Sarah mentioned that she also was with someone, but now it's just her and her brother. She asked Christy a hypothetical question about doing one bad thing to send everyone home. Christy says, yeah, that's probably fine if it's gonna save everyone else. We find Jade walking around town with the radio and he enters the bar. He starts to go off and keeps talking until the bartender tells him to just go figure out how to make the radio work. Boyd visits his wife's grave. He says that he plans to help the townspeople, but if he fails, it's gonna put everyone in a far worse position. He begs her for a sign to just help him out. Nathan goes off to find Father Khatri and confesses to him about what's been going on with Sarah. Meanwhile, Sarah's over at the Matthews place and offers to take Ethan to see the farm animals. Tabitha noticed that Ethan's wound is healing up really fast and decides to go with him and Sarah. At the farm, Sarah traps Tabitha in a room. She then takes out a scalpel and tries to kill Ethan. That is until Nathan quickly jumps in to stop her. Unfortunately, during their struggle, Sarah swipes at Nathan's throat and kills him. Jim wants justice for Sarah's actions. Boyd and Father Khatri say that they'll handle Sarah, but she ran off into the woods. Back at the Matthews residence, Tabitha writes her question on the wall. After visiting his wife's grave and asking for a sign, Boyd hears the song on the radio and believes this was the sign he was looking for. Nathan is buried after being killed by his sister, and Jade gathers parts from old cars. Tabitha comes to the church and asks Father Khatri, "Are we dead?" As Tabitha leaves, he goes downstairs where we find out that Sarah has been tied up. Boyd tells Kenny that he's going to go into the woods with a talisman. Kenny doesn't like the idea and storms off. Boyd goes to talk with Christy to find out what's been going on with Kenny. She tells him that maybe he needs a father figure more than anything else. Kenny is carving out some chess pieces like he used to with his dad. Boyd goes out with a ball and a mitt to play catch with him. He tells Kenny that he's sick and that he's gonna go find a way out because he can't protect people in the future. Tabitha drops off some things for storage at the diner and notices a certain bracelet. Ethan tells her the story of the Cromanacle and how it was able to find treasure in the dragon's cavern. When they go home, Ethan notices a light turning on and off. This prompts Tabitha to start digging in search of the source of power. Jim realizes that the cords don't have wires and the plugs don't look normal. Nothing makes sense. Jade goes into the Matthews home to help figure out how to make the radio work. They both set out into the woods to find the tallest tree and set up an antenna. When Jade touches the tree, he notices blood starts to pour out. Dead soldiers are now hanging from the trees and blood falls on him and he starts to see the symbol again. A Union soldier shows up and Jade starts to run away. He gets stabbed by the soldier and Jade starts to scream out. Jim rushes over to him and the vision stops. Jim tries the radio, but there's no answer. Jade keeps drawing the symbols over and over again. Kenny's mom recognized the symbol and went back into the storage room. In a box, they find a radio and a yearbook from 1972. She finds a journal that has the same drawings that Jade was making. Jim finds Tabitha digging in the basement looking for a source of power. Tabitha found out that the bracelet was the exact same one that Jim lost when Julie was being born. Julie found some flowers in the colony house. She arranged them on the windowsill. Later, we see a young man walking throughout Colony House as everyone is sleeping. He pulls back the curtain and one of the monsters is outside holding on to the flowers. She asks him to let her inside.
When can I come inside?
There's a party about to be thrown at Colony House. Fatima is being celebrated for having her 1-year anniversary in the town. Since this day does celebrate and remind people of the day they got stuck here, she's really concerned about Ellis drinking too much. Meanwhile, we've got Dum Kevin, who's out here setting flowers for his creature feature girlfriend. Jim makes plans for the antenna tower. He says that he's going to need almost all of the town's resources and the colony house to make it work. Meanwhile, Father Khatri meets up with Boyd. Boyd shares his plan to go out into the woods while Father Khatri shares his background story with him. He said that there was a boy that would come to his church who didn't want to go home one day. Rather than giving him shelter, Father Khatri sent him home with a candy bar. When he went to the boy's home, he saw that the father had severely abused and physically beat up the child. Khatri beat the father up in a fit of rage. He drove out to a bridge and almost committed suicide until he heard what he believed was the voice of God telling him to take another path. After arriving to the town only 2 hours later, he buried those same items that Sarah was able to draw on paper. He tells Boyd that Sarah is locked up in the basement and that she is the key to solving this mystery. His belief is that him, Boyd, and Sarah all need to go out into the forest to find some more answers. One colony house guy was talking about string theory and pocket dimensions. He mentions a comment about Ellis shooting up the place, which clearly triggers Ellis. Donna KO'd Buddy for his remark. We go back to Dum Kevin as he starts talking to his monster girlfriend, Jasmine. She promises that she will be the only one to enter the house if he opens the window. Well, he lets her in, and while they start kissing and she starts touching, she starts to scratch him up a little bit. Things get a little bit rough, and then she bites out his tongue and attacks him. He dead. Jade continues to draw symbols in Kevin's book. Mrs. Lou yells at him to come down for dinner. He finds a page that's stuck together in a journal that he's been going through. A photo drops out of a man holding the same journal. Kenny's mom notices that Victor is in the background. Jeepers Creepers, Jasmine opens up the window, letting the monsters come in through the bathroom window. Meanwhile, Julie goes into Victor's room and he appears to be packing his things. Down the hall, Trudy walks into a room full of monsters. They circle her and start touching all over her. She dead. Sitting on the stairs, Dale feels some blood from Jokerface falling on him. All hell breaks loose as the monsters surround the colony house and infiltrate the inside as well. Victor helps Julie escape the house and he sees the boy in white. Victor tells Julie to jump inside the faraway tree. When she does, she ends up in the cellar area. Back at the colony house, Ellis mistook Trudy's body for Fatima. Before he knew it, Jokerface was right behind him. Ellis plays 0 games and leaps out the window, breaking his arm. Fatima takes Ellis into the vestibule of the house and hangs up a talisman. The monsters are unable to get to them. Father Khatri and Boyd hear Donna's van and they quickly go outside to help everyone inside the sheriff's station. They successfully get everyone inside as the monsters get closer. Out of nowhere, a bald-headed scallywag monster slashes Father Khatri's neck. He prays the Lord's Prayer, but he then dies in Boyd's arms. He dead. Boyd packs up his things. Kenny says that colony house people will have to merge in with the townsfolk. Boyd tells Kenny to talk to the people and heads back to the church. He takes Sarah for a walk into the woods. He doesn't trust her and tells her that Father Khatri is dead. He leaves her in a shack until he returns. She lets him know that he doesn't have to restrain her because all she wants to do is just help. We have a flashback of Boyd traveling with his family. His wife Abby and son Ellis are driving and having a good old time until they come across the fallen tree and crows in the road. While they drive through the town, Father Khatri stops them, trying to warn them. They hear the shrieking of the monsters from far away and go into hiding underground. They hear the screams of people being killed outside. The next morning, they see all of the carnage. After being briefed on the situation by Donna and Father Khatri, Boyd starts to organize the town and collect up all the resources. The residents now start to merge everyone together from both the town and the colony house. Jade goes off to search for Victor. At the Matthews residence, Julie recounts her experience after the colony house massacre when she escaped through the faraway tree thanks to Victor. All of a sudden, Jade barges in the Matthews residence. Jim checks him real quick and tells him that he did receive some static on the radio. That inspires them both to petition Donna in using the colony house as a tower. She agrees to let them go ahead and build it. Tabitha finds Julie in the basement. Julie is still distraught and asks her mom about their divorce. Tabitha confesses and tells her the truth about Thomas's death. She said Thomas rolled off the changing table and her and Jim tried to pretend like everything was just fine. During Boyd's flashback, we find Abby staring off into the distance and Ellis is worried about his mom. Boyd comes back from one of his many adventures out in the woods and he returns back with a goat. He says that other livestock like chickens are also out there in the forest. Ellis begs his dad to stay because his mom is losing it. Boyd ignores him and goes into the forest anyway. He tries to mark his way on the trees until he sees a dog. After trying to follow the dog, Boyd ends up lost. Nightfall comes and he can hear the shrieking of the monsters. He falls into a cavern with the monsters close in pursuit. However, they find him and turn around and leave. Boyd looks around and finds several talismans embedded into the walls. The next morning, Boyd decided to take the talisman back to the town. He suddenly hears gunshots and runs back. When he arrives, he sees Abby shooting people left and right. She doesn't believe any of this is real and it's all one big nightmare. When Ellis steps into the picture, Abby aims her gun to shoot him too. However, Boyd quickly fires and kills Abby. Back to the present, Boyd visits Ellis in the clinic to announce that he's going back out into the woods. He wants to let Ellis know that he loves him and he doesn't want any regrets in the event that he doesn't return. Fatima tells Ellis that whatever happened in the past wasn't Boyd's fault and that he better go talk to his father. He listens to her and heads out after his dad. He told Boyd that he not only loves him, but he also acknowledges that Abby's death wasn't his fault. The two embrace and reconcile. While this is happening, Sarah decides to be hard-headed and steps out of the shack. Boyd asks Ellis to promise him that he will keep Sarah's status a secret until he comes back, and they'll talk about everything when he returns. Boyd takes Sarah with him into the woods. Back in the town, Kenny addresses the whole community and says that everyone needs to be united. Jim tells everyone about his plan to build the radio tower on Colony House, and everyone decides to pitch in. Boyd and Sarah start their journey into the woods. They set up camp at the original location where Boyd originally found the talisman. As Kenny continues to step up in Boyd's absence, he and Christy continue to get their flirt on. The town and colony folk have merged together after the incident at Colony House. Some of the Colony House folks have moved into the sheriff's office. Meanwhile, Tabitha is finishing up her digging in the basement. She starts to go upstairs, except all of a sudden, she finds herself going up a different pair of stairs. She hears a phone ringing, a baby crying, and a strange horn blowing in the distance. As she climbed up higher, she saw Jim hanging upside down. He started to yell, but the sound of the RV crash replaced his scream. She quickly wakes up from her nightmare. Boyd continues into the woods with Sarah, but he carves some signs in the trees to try to mark his path. As they were walking, Sarah ended up telling Boyd that the voices in her head told her that she had to kill those specific people or her brother and everyone else in the town would end up dying. They also told her about the 2 cars that were about to come into the town. Boyd ends up believing her and believes that she's also not a threat, and therefore he goes ahead and uncuffs her. Donna has woken up to find Eric, one of the residents, has committed suicide by hanging himself. Traveling back to the colony house, Fatima and Ellis reflect on what life could be like if they were to ever escape this place. Meanwhile, Donna is starting to emotionally break after the suicide that took place earlier. Back at the Matthews house, Ethan says that the drawings from Victor, they all fit together as a story. But as they go through the pictures, they do get more gruesome, and Tabitha thinks rather than trying to figure out everything, they should just go play another game instead. Jade and Jim try to figure out how to power the radio with the batteries that they got from the cars. Jade wants to find Victor with the hope that he can decipher the symbol. Kenny comes to Donna out of concern after the suicidal resident. He insisted that they still need wood, and Donna snaps. She grabs an axe and starts chopping up wood from the floor of Colony House. She heads off to the bar until Kenny comes back to check on her again. In the woods, Sarah tells Boyd that he reminds her of her brother Nathan. She also shares with him Nathan's theory that if you try to leave, then something would push back. The two come across bottles hanging in a tree. Before Boyd could take one down, Sarah writhes in pain, saying that she can hear them. She collapses and has a seizure. Boyd and Sarah are inside the tent with a talisman hanging up. He managed to get a bottle down, but the only thing that was written on it was 1864. Sarah said that the voice she heard was very different, and it was from a woman. The voice screamed that she was wrong and that there are things that are worse than the monsters. The voice also mentioned to tell the message to Mr. Fish and Loaves. Suddenly, the tent is jostled around. When it finally stops, they hear a loud horn and bright light flashing before them. All right, now let's dive right into episode 10. Ethan is playing with his toys, but rather than Julie telling him a story, he said that he's a big boy now and he can make up his own stories. Jade bursts into the Matthews house and shows them that he's figured out how to transfer electricity from the appliances to fix their power supply issue problem. Back in the woods, Sarah questions what dragged them in the tent. Unsure about it, Boyd goes outside the tent and sees that they are surrounded by a bunch of spider webs. Back at the diner, Jade and Jim share their idea with the rest of the town residents. They tell everyone that they need to find as many wires in appliances and cars as possible to help supply the power for the radio. Kenny and Christy strip the ambulance down of its wires, and Kenny talks about his dream places that he'd like to travel if they ever got to go home. He tells Christy that he'd love to take her out for a nice seafood dinner and travel to one of those places, but she reminded him that she's got a whole fiance back at home. Ellis brings Fatima outside of Colony House to the very same spot where he first saw her. He gets down on a knee and asks her to marry him. Boyd and Sarah continue on in the woods and they start to follow the light they saw earlier. Sarah begs Boyd to turn back because of the voice she heard in her head. She mentioned the name Mr. Fish and Loaves, and Boyd confirmed that only Ellis and his dead wife would know that name.
Who's Mr. Fish and Loaves?
It's me, Mr. Fish and Loaves. It's a nickname I had back in the service. Only 2 people who would have known that name is Ellis
and your wife.
Boyd hears a woman's voice that Sarah can't hear. He thinks he sees Abby covered up in webs, but it seems like that was not the case. He steps on something and a bunch of spiders come crawling out and attack him. He gets bitten by many of the spiders.
I got it.
Sarah and Boyd continue their journey, but Boyd seems to be losing it. He mentioned that this place must be giving you hope and it must be feeding off of your pain. I mean, that could be the case.
This place makes you think that you're doing the right thing. It gives you hope, then it takes it away like it's feeding on your pain.
Colony House continues to progress, and Jay needs a little pick-me-up. He goes back to Mrs. Liu's house, where he sees her still mourning her late husband. He shares with her a story about his grandmother and tells her that when you lose someone, they come with you when you go. Christy meets up with Kenny and tells him that she does wish she could go back home to her fiance, but then she also admits that she would like to travel with Kenny too. Christy said she couldn't decide what she wanted to do and grabbed Kenny's hand. The townfolk gather around to see the final construction of the radio tower. The lamp turns on and power gets going. Jim listens in and actually gets a signal, and everyone is elated.
We got power. We got a signal. Yes! Oh.
Tabitha leaves to finish up her digging in the basement. Suddenly, a massive storm is headed towards Colony House. Jim sends out a signal, but the storm is coming in quickly. Donna comes out to help him find a signal. The thunder and lightning starts to pick up until finally a voice can be heard on the other end of the radio. The male voice asked him if this was Jim Matthews and said that his wife shouldn't be digging that hole in the basement.
Who is this?
Your wife should be digging that hole, Jim.
Jim hurries back to his home to find Tabitha. At the Matthews residence, Tabitha falls through a hole in the basement. She finds the end of an electric wire that does lead to nowhere. A light shines through, and behind her is none other than Victor. He said that the boy in white told him that she would come. Victor said that this is where they sleep and they make drawings here too. Jim runs to the home and sees that the hole has caved in and everything is blocked off. Back in the woods, Boyd's wounds are slowing him down and the storm is starting to pick up. They can hear the loud horn and see a lighthouse in the distance. The boy in white appears to Sarah and talks to her telepathically. He confirmed to her that her brother Nathan's theory about this place was actually correct. This place is angry. He directs them to a faraway tree for safety. Boyd goes in and he finds himself trapped in some sort of tight space. Back in town, the radio randomly turns on and in pulls up a huge bus full of people. Okay, well, that was it for this season. Guys, please be sure to subscribe to this channel and please ring that bell. Click the bell so you can get the notifications because I've got some compelling theories for you. I have some interviews with the cast that you do not want to miss, and I will be breaking down every single episode in the next season. I'm telling you, we're going to have us a good old time. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. If you're new here and you like what you see, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell so you don't miss out the next time I drop a video. I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all, and until next time, I'll see you all later.